For continued certification, these organizations are recommended for certification. All requirements for continued certification has been fulfilled. Some of these organizations fulfilled their training requirements at events before the prior one-year cutoff for training. Under the new rules adopted by the council in February, the council must accept and authorize training that occurred since the beginning of an organization's 2-year certification period. I'll read these off. Organizations up for certification at this time from June 22nd through 2020. Crime Stoppers of Midland Incorporated, Crime Stoppers of San Angelo Incorporated, Crime Stoppers of Southeast Texas Incorporated, Crime Stoppers of Wise County Incorporated, Deaf Smith County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Donna Crime Stoppers, Grand Prairie Crime Commission, DBA Grand Prairie Crime Stoppers, Grand Prairie School Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Johnson County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Helene Crime Stoppers Incorporated, DBA Bell County Crime Stoppers, Marshall Harrison County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Northeast Texas Area Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Palo Pinto County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Florida County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Rockwall Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Tri-County Crime Stoppers. Do I have a motion to accept those organizations to continue certification?
I have a motion, but I'd like just to add, when you mentioned the FAR Crime Stoppers, you said FAR County and it's just a city of FAR?
Yeah, my apologies. FAR Crime Stoppers Incorporated.
I make a motion to approve the continuing certification.
I have a motion to continue the certification on these organizations. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Squire. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. The following organizations have met statutory requirements for certification, but have not completed the training requirements in 3.900 of the Texas Administrative Code. Staff recommends that the council pass a motion to renew these organizations' certifications under extraordinary circumstances as provided in 3.900, subsection I, Texas Administrative Code. In this case, that many local organizations are not aware that the council is no longer issuing temporary or provisional certifications until training requirements can be met. Staff will create corrective action plans for the organizations to complete their training at the next practical opportunity and report back to council. If the organizations fail to complete their corrective action plans, at that time, the council could consider the organizations for decertification. Staff will also proactively educate organizations on the changes to the recertification procedures. So in short, we can no longer do it. We're contingent that they complete this. So once we certify them, they will be certified. We will send them something to put them on a plan to let them know what we need, i.e. training in a period of time or anything else they're missing. If they do not meet that, then they'll be brought back in front of the council at a later date. And if we need to, we'll start decertification process then. But once we pass them now, they're certified until we decertify. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. I have, sir?
Quick question. What is their history from the past as far as them being in compliance in the past? Have they been pretty good about being in compliance? That'd be a question for staff, I imagine.
Yeah.
This is Connor Kenny with Crime Stopper staff, if I can answer that.
Yes, go ahead.
I don't have records as to how they were in the past, and unfortunately my tenure isn't long enough to have a memory of that. However, we reviewed all their other requirements, and the only requirements that they weren't in compliance with was the training. And in both of these cases, they had part of their training requirements complete, but not both board members and their coordinator.
Okay.
So I would say that
Okay.
they're almost in compliance, but weren't quite there.
I mean, I just wanted to just get some history on them, that's all. I'm good.
Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to accept these following organizations for recertification? Lake County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Wood County Crime Stoppers Incorporated.
Make a motion.
I have a motion by Hernandez. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Gilmore. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries to recertify those two programs. I'll probably go back to Mr. Kinney. A follow-up on prior certifications and organizations needed for training. Each of the 6 organizations certified by the council in February 2020 with incomplete training requirements worked with staff to fulfill their requirements, and all are now up to date on their training requirements. So if I remember correctly, Connor, we already approved these.
That's correct. At your last meeting in February, you did approve these because of the new way that we were operating under the rules. We're not doing a provisional approval, but they were approved with the understanding that staff was going to follow up with them, and if they were reticent to really come into full compliance with the requirements in the TAC, that they might be considered for decertification. But after we worked with them all, they all were able to attend training in April, online training, and they are all now up to speed and are no longer in any way out of compliance with the provisions of the TAC.
Okay, and just for the record, we'll read them out. That was Coppers Cove Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Corpus Christi Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Calhoun Crime Stoppers, Crime Stoppers of San Antonio Incorporated, Colorado County Crime Stoppers Incorporated, Greater Gonzales County Crime Stoppers Incorporated. So they're all certified. Last one, there's no action to take on them.
And Greg, it is Calhoun County Crime Stoppers, just for the
No, no.
record. Yeah, missed the county.
I'm sorry. I have new bifocal lenses. They're going in and out. One day they'll
You're
get
doing
them
awesome.
right. Calhoun County Crime Stopper. Okay, now we're moving to Section 5, discussion and possible action on council will receive an update from the director and staff. At this time, I want to turn it over. I think, is it Margie, you taking over?
Yes. Okay. First, I'd like to start off with just kind of going through what we're going to talk about. Our team will be discussing the COVID-19 impact on our team, and our activities that we're working on. Lindsay will be talking about training plans for basic courses, ambassador retreat, and annual conference. Some of that ties into COVID-19. We'll also be seeking some feedback and potential revision on the probation fee repayment report and creation of a corrective action plan. Connor will be walking us through that, and he'll also walk us through statistical reports, the certification reports, and the annual update form. Connor will be walking us through that so we can have a review of it and some discussion and possibly a potential approval. Before I get started on the COVID-19 impact, and this is kind of related, I do want to make an announcement that we recently learned that Jewel Tapp has accepted a position with another state agency and will be leaving our team. We are very sad. We are going to truly, truly miss her. She's been a great addition to our team, but she, received an opportunity and couldn't pass it up. And we all have been through this before. When you get a good opportunity, and you just got to take it and go for it. And so we do wish her great success in her new position. So I did want to mention that at the beginning so everyone will know. But Jewel will be with us till June the 12th, which is her last day, and then she will her position will be vacant after that.
Thank you for that, Margie.
Oh, sure. So just to get started with the COVID impact on our team, we have been working remotely from home since March 18th or thereabouts. And basically we'll continue to do so until we're instructed otherwise. So we, along with many, many people in Texas and across the nation, we are working remotely from home. On a positive note, we do have remote access to our office computers and our network files. So we've been able to continue to conduct business. We've been continually working with organizations, providing technical assistance on program certifications, working on our application reviews. Really, all of that has still been consistent, and we've still been able to keep working. And so that hasn't been impacted. We're still responding to emails and phone calls and all sorts of things. The nice thing for our team, we've got a really great team, and we have been working closely. We've been having team meetings, if not weekly, every other week, to make sure that we're able to stay on top of our work and to stay connected, which is the main thing for us. So in that regard, things have been going well, but we have been working remotely. Also, one of the other impacts in relation to our current grants. So all organizations that have a current grant, Crime Stoppers Assistance Fund grant, the funds are available for to reimburse for travel and training expenses. I won't jump ahead too much because Lindsay will be talking about this in a moment, but we all know that we have had a cancellation of a basic course and some changes that are going to be happening with our training. So the funds that are not going to be used to attend a basic course or a certain training, we basically are not going to be able to do grant adjustment, like line item grant adjustments to move training funds to another line item. The training funds that exist in the budget line items for training will have to remain there. So those funds will be available to programs still in the next funding cycle for their next grant. So that's kind of a new change. I think here we're in uncharted waters, but we're really happy to work. We'll be notifying grantees, and we'll be happy to work with everyone individually to make sure everyone understands, and we can answer any questions that they may have to help them along. In Jules' absence, Lindsay, actually our whole team can work, but Lindsay will be working with the grants and working with programs. Let's see. One of the other changes that have impacted our team regarding Jules' position, basically on May 20th, the governor urged all state agencies and institutions of higher education to pursue cost-saving strategies that will not affect the state's response to COVID-19. So an effort to help in these efforts, basically, the governor's office is taking steps to reduce expenses, which includes not filling vacant positions for right now. So our team will temporarily have a vacancy until further notice, but at some point I'm confident that we'll be able to post a program coordinator position in the future. So we will have a new team member in the future, but as of right now, all vacant positions with our office won't be filled. So, Lindsay, Connor, and I, will work together to make sure there are no gaps or lacks in service to organizations and to programs as we, continue working remotely and continue with a vacant position. But fortunately, that will only be temporary. That's about all I have on the impact for COVID-19 that's in relation to our team. Are there any questions or comments about that from council? No? Okay, well, thank you. I will now turn it over to Lindsay to talk about the next bulleted item on training.
Hi, so I'm just going to start with the basic course training. The original basic course training that was scheduled for April has tentatively been moved to September 27th through the 29th. That will be held in Fredericksburg. This is, I want to say, maybe like the third time that we've had to push it back just because of the COVID-19, pandemic that we're in. So tentatively, again, it's scheduled for Fredericksburg, September 27th through the 29th. We're also possibly may have a training with Grand Prairie, depending on their status, and of course our status in July we were thinking about. We've also started talking to the OOG's internal IT people or our IT staff to possibly have a training online to maybe kind of go that route. We've kind of started talking about that to feelers about how that would possibly work. Any questions about the basic training from council so far? Nope. Okay. So then just to kind of give y'all a little background, I'm sure y'all are aware, but to plan a conference, it usually takes between 9 months to a year to kind of get everything, finalized and in place. That's also by our office and by the host. This year, the adult conference in October was going to be hosted by Carlo. It's going to be on South Padre Island. And Carlo, you can speak to this also if you want, but one of the hotels where it was going to be at, they had furloughed all of their staff due to COVID. So, Carlo and I and Margie, we've all been speaking and working together. We've had a couple of meetings, and just recently we figured that we should postpone everything and push everything a year back. The island is not fully up and running. There's no telling when the island will be fully up and running. Not to mention conference hosts depend on a great deal about registration. Registration makes up a bulk of the expenses to cover a conference. Typically a conference, from what I've seen, costs, in the higher, $80,000. The island, it would be a little bit more expensive just because it is on the island. So in working closely with Carlo and, planning it, we have just decided to push everything back a year. So the conference for the adult conference has been pushed back to the week of October 3rd through the 9th. 2021. It will be, 3 or 4 days during that week. We're not exactly sure on the dates yet, but it'll be sometime in that week. It will again be in South Padre Island. We also started working with Abilene, who is also our next host for the adult conference. And they got approval from their host hotel to push their conference also back a year. So that conference will be October 19th through the 21st of 2022. To kind of piggyback off of the adult conferences, we have been working with Beaumont and, planning their conference, which is the campus conference that takes place in February. They will also rely heavily on, donations. We are also registration fees. And so we all have figured that it's just the best course of action to follow what the adult conferences are doing and push their conference back to 2022 also. And I think that's it. Carlo, did you want to add anything? Because I know it kind of all started with planning your conference.
In short, the island, even though they had no cases, well, they were the first ones to have people test positive, but when they left the island, and of course, that created a huge lockdown on the island. It was a ghost town. Everybody was gone. City employees, everybody was furloughed. Hotels were shut down. So for a period of over 2 months, the island was completely vacated. Now that they've gone back on, they're of course following the governor's order as the 25% and the 50% and so forth. The hotels, restaurants, the city itself trimmed a humongous amount of money for the budget. As you, just to inform you, the site of the actual conference at the convention center is owned and operated by the city. We currently only have one employee there that's trying to put things back in order because all the other employees were furloughed. not really knowing who's going to survive due to the lack of revenue on the island because they got shut down during the peak periods or the beginning of the year. So if you can imagine having 200, 300 attendees trying to use 4 or 5 elevators, and of course, then the safety of the attendees and all that. So I think that after meeting with Lindsay and Margie and stuff, it was in the best interest also to keep people safe. And some people will travel from very far in the state. Some of them may be skeptical to travel and attend. So I think that the best decision was made, and I was able to secure already a date and the site of the actual conference has been already reserved. It's too good to go. All we would need to do is, on my part, is reconfirm the hotels and, of course, reach out to the presenters for the conference to see which those are going to be willing to travel to be presenters at the conference. So it's so far everybody's positive that we've spoken to, and hopefully this thing continues in the positive way. And we should have, I guess, by the beginning of the year, we should know again where we're at with everybody's safety and being able to supply food. That's another thing that's come up, where the shortages, the pricing of the food has changed dramatically. So maybe once we get past this year and start the new year, we'll be able to have a good or a better actual number, a real number, because of all the changes that have had to take place. So, but I think Lindsay and Margie, we've been in contact, and I was able to get things moved around. And I thank the gentleman or the organization out of Abilene that was able to move their arrangements 1 year forward. So I thank them for that.
Yeah, I just want to, it's truly been like a really big team effort. And I know a lot goes into planning the conference, as long as, you know, as the hosts also know. And you know, when Carlo and I were talking, and Margie as well, we, you know, the hotel had said, well, they could maybe give us a plan, you know, late summer. But by then it's already too late, because by then we have to already secure pretty much everything. And we're just working on little hiccups towards the end of the summer for an October conference. So it really just made the best sense to kind of push everything back. And then for the campus conference, you know, to kind of follow suit, you know, we get like the social distancing, but campus conferences are based on, you know, for kids, and it's more engaging, more interactive. And so I just don't know how all of that would work if the campus conferences didn't follow the same suit. I don't know if y'all have any questions about that. Are y'all okay with that?
The only question I have is, with the conferences being pushed back like they are and the lack of training, well, we just certified Lake County Crime Stoppers and Wood County Crime Stoppers, and with the assumption that they're going to obtain training soon, and that our next meeting we'll be able to talk about how they successfully were trained. Are they signed up for the Fredericksburg, or have we maybe reached out to them to let them know that they are capable of locating a location and hosting a training where one of us could go to them to provide training like has been done in the past?
Well, we can reach out. We will be reaching out to them. Houston is also continuing to host their trainings, their online webinars that they're doing. And Lindsay, I may have jumped into what you were about to say, but we are also looking at doing online webinars, or at least for basic. We just got Lindsay has been working with Computer Services, and they just increased the amount on the webinars that we can train. Quite a few. It shows up here on, I don't know if you can see it, we can train up to 500 people on this GoToWebinar. So that's another thing. Our next thing that we're looking at is to do an online webinar. So we can work with the organization to make sure that they can secure training to get certified.
Any other questions about conference?
I had two kind of questions. One was piggybacking on Steve's, just about organizations. We want to make sure that we give access to people to fulfill their training requirements. So it'll be 2 years from the adult conference, because it was 2019 of October, and then we're talking about 2021. So I know a lot of organizations will have to have training in that time period. And I think that's the great thing about the adult conference, is because they can get most of their, if not all of their training requirements done in like a quick few days. So yeah, I'd kind of like to know kind of the plan. Do we have enough webinars to fulfill the 16 hours so that people can get that?
So if we got approval and were able to do a basic course online, it would just be exactly that, like a basic course online, for them to receive their 16 hours. But we're still trying to work out the logistics of all of that.
Right.
Like I said, I just worked with computer services early last week, and was told that it's something that we could possibly do.
And there is one other thing, if I can add, and Connor, you may want to jump in, but we have been working with, or actually Connor and Joel have been working with programs to get them certified ahead of time. So Connor, if you know, I don't know if you have anything to add, but we have quite a few programs that should be certified in October, already have their requirements. We have a handful that don't. So we've been working ahead to try to stay ahead of the curve.
Yes, this is Connor Kenny, Crime Stopper staff. So I've gone back through the training records for the last 2 years and identified everybody who is short on their training requirements, as well as been going through and verifying the nonprofit registration of the various organizations. There are a couple that are at this point short of their training requirements. So we are, I think, likely to see another list in October of organizations who are, you'll have to do an exceptional circumstances finding and certify them then. And then as well, the two that you certified today who need their requirements, you know, they're going to remain on that list until we can start making some training opportunities available. So good news is that the majority, and I think I want to say about 80% of the ones that I looked at for October are probably going to be fine. The tricky bit is that there are some that are short of it, and until we ramp up the training opportunities either physically or online, we're going to still remain to have a couple of those organizations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great with 20%. And I think y'all are doing a great job of trying to come up with solutions. I mean, this is a very unique time. So thanks to everybody, Harlow and staff, on trying to find alternatives to training. And I think with the smaller kind of basic training, even if it's in person, I think there's a lot of hotels that are desperate for, small conferences, or small, willing to take, like at Fredericksburg or other cities. So I think a combination of online and small in person, I think, will be great until y'all feel comfortable in doing a larger conference. So thank you.
So then with that said, the last thing that I'm going to cover is just the Ambassador Retreat. As y'all know, the Ambassador Retreat is typically held in July. It is typically a 2-day session, and where the 12 ambassadors will come to our office, and we kind of have 2 days of educational sessions, and then just kind of making a field trip of it all, just because we don't know where we're at, and we honestly don't know when we'll be going back into the office. We have also decided to cancel this year's Ambassador Retreat, since it's typically held the 2nd or 3rd week in July. I know. Yeah. I know it's very important.
Is there a way to I know that's such a special opportunity for these high school students, and I guess sometimes even middle school. Is there a way to, have y'all explored other alternatives to try to get them that experience?
So I have talked to a few of their sponsors, and the kids that are chosen, I mean, obviously they're chosen because they're great students. So they are typically start getting involved with school activities the end of July. So they're kind of booked up end of July through school. And so I had kind of asked, well, what about spring break? And they had said that it just depends because they're also involved in school activities, debate and stuff like that. And sometimes those activities take place, during their time off at school. So we'll look at school holidays and just see if that'll work. But right now I don't see, because they're in different school districts. So, their spring breaks are different. It may be maybe around December, the Christmas holiday. And so that kind of gets into the holiday travel time. And so I don't know, but I am working with their sponsors to see when they think would be good. And we're also kind of filling out if maybe there's a different city or, a campus Crime Stopper that wants to maybe host the Ambassador Retreat. So I have started putting out those fillers just because I don't want them to miss out, especially the graduating seniors, for this coming up year. I don't want them to miss out on the retreat, but I don't.
How many ambassadors are there?
There's 12.
This year? 12. Okay. So, and then how many guest parents, sponsors typically come with those 12 people? What's the total number?
Between 30, maybe 25 and 35, maybe 40.
Okay. And so there's no way to still host that in June with that level, or?
Well, we're not even in the office. So, that's like sitting here today, no, because we're not even allowed to go into our office right now. And that's where our conference or the Ambassador Retreat starts and ends, is in our office.
Gotcha.
And not to mention, I'm sorry, and not to mention that, some of the field trips and the places that we have to go to, they're barely allowing 25% of their staff back in the office. And so it's not, I guess with the environment as it is right now with COVID-19, taking a tour and doing things like that, it's just not conducive to do that right now. I think we're just taking it off the table for the summer, and we're still looking at options for later in the year to see if we can make it work. But for the summer, it's just not conducive right now.
Gotcha. Is there a way to do an online, at least mixer for them this summer?
Sure.
Before the school year
we can look at
starts?
that as well.
Yeah. Or I don't know with the field trips, but even if one person goes and does a tour, a live, I don't know if that's something that's possible too.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking at options because I hate, because there's no option for the graduating seniors, so I'm looking at something. I would prefer to do something in person because they really do build on each other.
Right.
And it's an awesome thing to witness.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, if it's helpful, I'm happy to go to some of the places and, show a camera or whatever. Whatever y'all need. I know that's a special opportunity for them, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. And that's all I have, just an update on training. Y'all have any other questions for me?
Steve, did you have something? Real quick on training, I wanted to clarify something that came up. When this all hit, Houston sent out an email about mandated training. I think what that was intended for was mandated recertification training, but it wasn't mandated that people took Houston's training. The question that I have, if the rest of the council can help me or staff, when we approved Houston's training, was that for 16 hours or for their 8-hour class?
8 hours.
That's what I was thinking. So when they put it out, so even that attending Houston's won't really certify anybody to just allow them to get half the training. Is that correct? So, and I just wanted to bring that up and make sure. So, anything else going on from y'all on the staff?
I have nothing.
Are we ready to move to public comment?
No, we are going to turn it over to Connor so we can walk through the last two bullets
Okay, there we
on
go.
this agenda item.
And
Connor?
Connor, I'll make you a presenter now so you can share your screen.
Okay,
Hey,
let's see if
Real
this
quick,
works. Mhm.
y'all know I'm muting, unmuting. I'm at the gun range, so I don't know if y'all can hear all the gunfire, but I've been going. You can't hear it, then I'm fine. If it bothers you, let me know and I'll mute it back out.
If we see you run or duck, we know you have a problem.
It
Like I
comes.
said, you're there and not me, so.
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
We can-
yes, sir.
I can.
There we go. Okay. Show my screen. And all right, so we're looking at the PFR now. Let me max this up. All right, everybody see the application for initial certification?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, great. So some slight changes to what we were anticipating asking for approval versus having a discussion at this time from what was posted on the agenda. So the documents that we wanted to go over today and ask you guys to go ahead and approve are the initial certification forms and the continuing certification forms. And remember that the rules that you guys adopted in February say that the council shall approve the information that is asked for on both of these forms, but not the format. So after we get your approval today, presumably, and approve some changes, we'll go and revise these forms and update them. The statistical reports, actually the language in the rules does say that it will be on a form prescribed by council. So we are going to review those and ask you to go ahead and on a somewhat temporary basis approve them so that we can have them used in June, at the end of June, the upcoming half-year statistical report. And then if we, as they are, I'm sorry, just we need you to actually approve the form and not the just the information on there. We are planning on updating the instructions and examples and format of the statistical reports, but we're just going to have to come back to you in the fall with that kind of reorganized, reformatted form and have you approve that version then. And then the last two documents that we want to talk about are the annual information update and the PFRR. Both of those documents, we are not asking you to approve today. We wanted to have a conversation, get your input. We will be surveying the Crime Stoppers organizations and finding out what their thoughts are. And based on all that information, we'll be coming back in the fall with a revised annual information update and a revised PFRR for your approval. So is that all clear before we jump into the documents here?
Yes.
Okay. And just a reminder, the documents that we'll be showing on the screen here and are in the backup and you've been looking at are the current documents that we use. And we're going to orally present just a few changes here that we'd like you to go ahead and authorize. So starting with the initial certification form, this one's been around for a while. And we don't have any changes to the information to be asked. We do want to reformat this form. But the changes to the information versus the current form are, we have two items. One is that right now we ask for the name of the sheriff and chief of police for each agency, as you can see here. However, for some of the larger agencies, you know, if I can get the chief on the phone, he may not know what I'm talking about if I give him a call. So we wanted to add some information there for the point of contact. In your smaller agencies, that might be the chief, it might be the coordinator, but we want to just make sure that we have a good point of contact at each agency so we can give them a call when somebody comes for initial certification to just run through with the agency what this involves, what's expected of them, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So change number 1 to initial certification is adding an agency point of contact for each law enforcement agency that's participating. The second change that we wanted to make for information to be asked is actually on the last page, which is the list of documents to be provided. Scrolling slowly here. There we go. So these are the documents that we asked to be attached to the initial certification application when they bring it up and or when they initially apply for certification. And one of the things that we don't ask for right now are the organization's bylaws. We think that in staff's opinion, it would be good to request those so that we can review them and have them on file. I have heard from some organizations that they're not sure they might have the original bylaws on file, so it would be nice for us to be able to just go back and pull them as well as review them to make sure that they're following our best practices. And I've discussed with some council members that we also probably want to go back and review the starter kit that we have for organizations that contains some model bylaws, model MOUs, and make sure that everything that we're asking for here, we have a kind of a template document or a model document so that people can just insert their name in and run that through if that's what they wish to do. So again, what we're asking for is approval of this document with the requested changes. The 2 requested changes are to add some fields for a point of contact for each agency and to require organizations to submit their bylaws with this document.
Question, Connor.
Go ahead.
Do you see a need to retain the name of chief or sheriff in the first change you're requesting to, or just supplement or insert the point of contact in that place?
I don't know that I have an opinion on that. I'd be interested in hearing from the council.
I personally, I don't see a value in naming the chief or sheriff if we're going to name the point of contact for that agency and we're naming that agency. Especially this is initial certification, so that agency head does change frequently.
But I think even on that, Steve, that more importantly, the coordinators change, so maybe it would help keep up to date on who the coordinator is.
Yeah, the point of contact coordinator.
Yeah, the point of contact, because that's who we're going to deal with more than the head figure.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. So I'm thinking maybe instead of add an additional line, just replace name of chief sheriff with the actual point of contact or coordinator. Seems like it would be more beneficial. Question mark.
So the way that we could do this, so I presented all the changes. Does a council member want to make a motion to go ahead and reauthorize the questions that we ask on this form with any changes?
So I'll make a motion to proceed with the changes that Connor has recommended.
Okay, so I have a motion to proceed with the changes that Connor has recommended. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Sure. This is Connor Kenny.
Go ahead.
Can I ask the motion maker if he is including removing the chief sheriff's name in his motion?
Sure.
I didn't see a lot of acclamation with that, so we can leave that there and just add an additional line with the point of contact.
Okay.
I honestly, Steve, I agree.
I agree too.
Just put point of contact.
Okay,
Where-
yeah, I'm all in agreement with what I was talking about. We will authorize the change to replace name of chief sheriff to be the point of contact.
Yeah.
And then also
Okay,
add bylaws on page 4. That will be my motion.
So basically, we have a motion to change the sheriff or chief to a point of contact. Add the bylaws on there, and if, Connor, do you have any other changes you wanted?
Not to this form. I'm ready to move on to the next one after y'all approve this motion.
I have a motion to accept the changes that Connor has put in front of us to add change the line for sheriff and chief to point of contact, and to add the bylaws to be submitted. Is that correct?
Yes.
All in favor? Or do I have a second?
Oh.
I need a... Yeah, I got it.
I'll second that.
Do I have a second? All right, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hang on, I got Perry. You approved?
Aye.
There you go. All right, motion carries.
Okay.
Connor, you make it.
All right, moving on to the next form. This is the application for continued certification. And very few changes that we were expecting to this one. We had this spring been talking about removing the Secretary of State and the IRS slots because we do have that information on file. However, in reviewing organizations for certification, there are a number of organizations that have fallen a year or two behind on their filings with the IRS or Secretary of State. The IRS or Secretary of State for all these organizations is still showing their registration is current, so they still meet the requirements for certification, but the staff felt that it was good to keep this on here as a reminder that they need to be filing those documents, as well as that they need to have that information handy, their employee identification number as well as their Secretary of State filing number. So we're going to leave that intact. The two changes that we're requesting to make to the information asked for in this form, number one is to remove item number 5, which is the financial statements. And we now get that information with the PFRR according to the rules that we changed and to the form that we will be approving this fall. So we don't need to ask for bank statements or letters from the CSCD or anything like that because we get it annually. So we're able to remove that requirement. We will likely, we are planning on putting on here probably a checklist reminder that they need to be current on their statistical reports, their PFRR, those sorts of things. But it's not something that they would attach to this form. And that's something we discussed at length in February. So change number 1 is to remove the requirement to attach financial statements. And change number 2 is to add to the attesting at the bottom that the chair or president attest that the board met and voted to apply for continued certification. Right now, it's really the president or chair submitting it. And the staff felt that because this is essentially asking for authorization to receive public funds, that the organization will be charged with stewarding, that the entire board should take an affirmative vote on that. So we would modify the attestment down at the bottom to include that the board met and voted to seek continued certification and the date that vote occurred. So as a reminder, we are asking the council to reapprove the continued use of asking the information that's on this form with 2 changes. One is to no longer require that financial statements be attached. And number 2 is to require the chair to attest that the board voted to seek recertification and the date that vote took place.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the changes that Connor proposed to us there?
Moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, council. Moving on to the statistical reports. We did notice upon review that the rules that the council adopted actually requires this form and not just the information asked for to be approved by the council. And we do have, as you can see here, the next reporting period is coming up at the end of June, so we need to go ahead and do this. And we are planning on bringing back this form to you in the fall with some changes to make it a little bit more user-friendly in terms of the instructions that are included and the examples that are provided. The adult report is a little light on those. It has been historically, so when we moved it over to an online format, that came with it. So we think the adult form could be bulked up, and even the campus form could be made a little bit more supportive for the users in that sense. In terms of the changes that we would seek to be made immediately so that we can go ahead and implement that for the June reporting date, is just to remove all of the references to grants. We think that that is a little obsolete, and we have that information and administer those grants separately, so we don't need to ask them what their grant number is or when the grant starts or what the project title for their grant is. We think that might be confusing to folks who don't have a grant. So what we are asking the council for at this point is to authorize these forms as is for the June reporting period with the change of removing references to grants. And we will come back in the fall with a further updated version.
Okay, I apologize. I had people text me from the other side of the webinar here. So we need a motion to approve that?
Yes, you will need a motion to authorize both statistical reporting forms with the change of removing references to grants.
Okay. I know that Councilmember Day had a couple of changes or suggestions for changes over there. Lauren, you have comments?
Yes, Chair. We had previously were operating under the understanding that we just needed to approve the information that we would request.
Okay.
But upon closer inspection of the rules, we realized that it's the actual form that needs to be approved. So the changes that Councilmember Day suggested, as well as some others that we have in mind in terms of just beefing up the instructions and maybe rearranging stuff, we do want to make those, and we want to be thorough about it. So we'll be consulting with Councilmember Day as well as anybody else who is interested in dialoguing with us about that and coming back with those more extensive changes at your next meeting.
Okay.
But we do need you to authorize this form now because these forms are due at the end of June.
I
Okay.
move that we accept the 5B Campus Crime Stoppers statistical report and the 5C Crime Stoppers statistical report with the reference about grant info being removed. Is that everything, Connor?
That's everything, and we'll come back in the fall.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept 5B, 5C with the reference removed. All in favor? Okay.
Second.
Things going on. Do we have a motion to have a second?
Aye. We'll
I
second.
don't like webinars, but you know. So, motion and a second. All approved? Hang on, Perry, let me turn you on here. Okay, all approved?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, moving on to the next two forms, which are the PFRR and the annual update. We will not be asking you for a motion or action today. Of course, we are posted to take action on the annual update if you wish to take action. But staff's thinking at this point is that these two forms are very interactive in terms of the changes that we make with each other. And they're also not due for another 7 months. So we have the time to just take some feedback from you and make some changes and come back in the fall. Starting with the PFRR, we want to, and so I'm just going to review the changes that we're thinking at this point, and then staff would love if the council would engage in a little discussion and let us know if you have any other feedback that you'd like to give us. At this meeting, we are going to survey the Crime Stoppers organizations for their input, and then as well, if you'd like to get in touch directly with staff in the interim, we'd be love to get that, and we can consult individually with each of you about the changes as we prepare these drafts. Just as a reminder, we can't have three of you talking to each other, but you can talk to us as long as you don't ask us what the other council members are saying. That keeps us good with the Open Meetings Act. So in the PFRR, the changes that we are contemplating are general updates to the instructions. We plan on moving this online to make us better able to produce statistics and aggregate numbers as well as turnout reports for you, for the public, and for Crime Stoppers organizations. I want to confirm at this point that we consulted again with our financial compliance staff, and other than reporting how much organizations are diverting into their administrative accounts, we are not seeking any regular reporting of balance sheets or bank statements for administrative accounts. That is something that we discussed in the fall, and we're keeping with that. So there will be no addition of additional reporting for administrative accounts that we are anticipating. And the changes that we are anticipating is mostly keeping this form intact, but moving over information that does not really relate to the finances of an organization, moving that out of this and moving it over to the annual update. The idea is kind of, your accountant should be able to fill out 98% of this. They shouldn't need to necessarily know anything about your operations. So on the first page here, at the bottom we have the section on law enforcement agencies supported by this Crime Stoppers organization. That can all be moved over to the annual update, and we are also anticipate making some wording changes and additions to ask for a primary point of contact with email and phone number instead of just the main switchboard, again, so that when we call somebody, they have a clue what we're calling them about and not just getting the main switchboard. And then going on to the next page, and council members, feel free to chime in and stop me if you have questions as I'm going.
Well, Connor, I would to bring up one point since you're on the agency name. You have programs such as my own. We support every law enforcement agency in 3 counties. The way the current form reads, we should list out a point of contact with every single agency. Maybe going forward, we need to identify, are we looking for the primary point of contact as far as the coordinator, that'd be myself and my agency, or are we looking for an actual point of contact for every single agency that program serves? Because that could be daunting for some programs.
I would love to open that up to discussion with the council. Y'all have more experience with this than we do. My understanding is that if you're working directly with law enforcement agency, that you want to have a memorandum of understanding, you want to have a point of contact there, and I guess I'm wondering, do we distinguish between agencies that are in your service area versus those that you more directly interact with and have an MOU for? Y'all know more about how that works than I do. So yeah, should we have slots for every agency in your service area? Should it just be the ones that you have MOUs with? Should you have MOUs with every agency in your service area? If y'all can clarify on that, I'd love to get some information.
All good questions. My thoughts are that we definitely want the host agency information, the agency that is employing the primary coordinator. Programs operate differently across the state. With our program, that primary coordinator is just myself, and then I sublet out to all other agencies. So they bring me their information they need for Crime Stoppers to work with. I provide them with tips that we're able to drum up. But we don't necessarily have a coordinator at every one of those agencies. I do have a point of contact with all those agencies, though. So I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're asking.
I agree with Steve. You only need one person to be in charge, not 500. If everybody else is an umbrella under him, as long as he knows who his point of contacts are, that's what matters. As long as when it goes to the office of the governor needing to contact someone, you should go directly to that one person and not 5 or 10 or 20 of them.
Yeah, the coordinator.
In the business world, you go to one person. You don't go to everybody.
I think Steve's correct. 'Cause if you look at one organization, they have hundreds of, like on a campus, they have hundreds of schools underneath them. So we would have to track all 100 people that were in there as opposed to one coordinator that's taking care of all of it. I think as Connor, as we talked before, if I may, I don't think there's a problem with asking what cities you're servicing. but I think it should come back to that one initial contact that's taking care of all of it.
So is the answer then the agencies that, well, how many agencies do you have MOUs with?
I only cover mine. I know the one agency has MOUs with all, and they have hundreds. Councilman Esquire may have MOUs with 3 of them, but then he would still be the contact.
That's exactly the way we operate. We have an MOU with each sheriff's office, but all the smaller PDs and constables offices, we do not.
There's
If
only
I can
one.
chime in. Oh, sorry, Carlo. Really, we need the point of contact for like who the coordinator is, because if our office is going to call and we have a question about an organization or an MOU, we typically will need to contact the coordinator, and the coordinator reaches out from there on. This is helpful knowing the different agencies that support the organization, so it could correspond with the MOU. But as far as contacts, we typically talk to whoever the coordinator is for the Crime Stoppers organization.
Can I ask what the difference is between an agency that a Crime Stoppers organization has an MOU with versus one they don't? Is it that the agencies that it has an MOU with are the agencies that the coordinator for the Crime Stoppers organization, because some of them are not law enforcement employees, interacts with directly and will pass tips directly?
Typically, the MOU is with the agency that provides a law enforcement coordinator. At least that is the way it is with my program and all the programs that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
The supporting or supported agencies, they do not provide a coordinator, therefore we don't have an MOU with them.
Okay, so is the answer maybe that, because I think it would be helpful for us to update the instructions on this so people know how to fill it out. Should we maybe be asking for every agency with which a Crime Stoppers organization has an MOU?
No.
Or agency that supplies a coordinator.
Right. Well, we asked for their coordinator. We separately asked for their coordinator because there are actually organizations out there that utilize a coordinator who is not a current employee of law enforcement agency. I know that there are some retired folks who serve as coordinator. They just have a good relationship with the agency. But if you have an MOU, you can pass tips directly to that organization. And should entities be disclosing annually everyone who they have an MOU with and directly pass tips, or is that not necessary? Are we only asking for who your coordinator is?
If I can give some input on that. The way I see it is, we have one certified program. Those are the ones that are responsible for everybody who's under them. If you want to attach a list of the agencies that are under your umbrella or people that you work with, that'd be a separate deal. But since we're directing it just to the certified program, I think all the information, the only information that needs to be provided is that of the one that's responsible, the one that's certified. There's no reason for someone to go out and call other entities when really they don't know of someone directly. Or if you call for the office of the governor, they could take it as a hoax call or something. But I feel that the question here should go directly to the program that's certified, and that's one person there. And if you have a second person that could possibly give information, a co-coordinator, then you can list that. But I don't see a reason why to show all the additional. Now, if you want proof of the MOUs, that would be something totally different to do with more of recertification or applying for certification rather than the PFRR. That's my input on that.
Well, I think that's what we were discussing, Carlo, too. So thanks for pulling us back to this point, is that this information is going to be moved, or we would like to move it to the annual report, because this information there's not a connection between what we're asking here necessarily and what's reported on the form. So we're trying to streamline the process, make the reporting easier. We do want to know what organizations have, or what law enforcement agencies have MOUs with the programs. And so I think that's why this section historically has been asked, because if you look at the question below, it's asking, is there basically a written document with the responsibilities for the organization? So that's talking about the MOU. So we can, if we can go ahead and get this information pulled off the document and then ask for information, just a contact for the organization. Unless y'all disagree, I mean, I think if we have a contact person, a POC, which is the coordinator for the Crime Stoppers organization, and then we just know the name of the agency, I think that might suffice. What do y'all think?
No, I agree with you, Margie. It's just the way it's worded, it's every agency that we serve, and there won't be a coordinator for every agency that is
Right.
served.
And I totally agree with you. Totally.
Okay.
Barry's got a comment. Hang on a second. Can y'all hear him?
Yeah, I realize that we're going to move this question to another forum, but I wonder if it really makes a difference which agencies under the Crime Stoppers program have MOUs. We already know the jurisdiction of the Crime Stoppers program, and I think it's a fair assumption that any law enforcement agency in that jurisdiction, with or without an MOU, could call Crime Stoppers for assistance. So I'm just not sure the value in making a program list all the law enforcement agencies in their jurisdiction. What value does that give us?
Agreed.
Well, I think I'm going to hang on again. I got echo from Perry. If you need to comment again, Perry, let me know. I think what it could do, I mean, we could, if I understand it, we could take it off of this one to streamline this form here. But in the certification, you would add all the agencies underneath you. And I think the value of that is not so much, we worry about the MOU, but to kind of track how many agencies or cities we're actually covering across the state to keep a better statistical purpose of how many are actually covered as opposed to one county or 3 cities in that county covered or 10 cities in that county covered. So it would give us better numbers across the state. If that is, I think it's what they may be looking for.
I agree with you, Greg. And so like in the additional or annual information update, if maybe there's just a blank that says how many agencies are supported by your program, and then you can supply a number, and then we give the point of contact to those agencies providing coordinators. I think that would streamline the information we're looking for and provide all the details we need.
Yeah. Good. I see Perry shaking. Is that good with you, Perry?
Yes.
Okay. Great. I got notes on all that. Moving on to the next page, the corporation information. There we go. So the website, the email address, tip line number, all that can be moved over to the annual update. And I think we do want to ask for that annually, just because if that's something that changes, we really need to know as soon as possible. So asking for it once a year, we thought was fine. Under the social media, we'd like to go ahead and ask for not just do you use Facebook, but what's the name of your Facebook page? What's the name of your Twitter account? And that can enable us to set up aggregate feeds and as well as create directories, social media directories, things like that. So not just do you use it, but where is it?
Yeah, Connor, is that going to be the URL? Are we going to ask for a URL?
That might be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Just making notes here. And then we would keep the court order restricted funds information the same. And then going over to the Campus Crime Stoppers information, We wanted to move the campus information over to the annual update, but we wanted to get a little bit more information because right now our information is actually pretty scant on what we know about the campus program. So you'll see here that there's no campus Crime Stoppers program. There's the safe school programs, which are not really necessarily TIP programs or full-fledged Crime Stoppers programs. We have the umbrella programs, and then a fourth type that we don't ask on is the standalone programs, where the ISD is kind of the sponsoring organization, and they have their own. We have a couple of those, so we wanted to add that as a checkbox. Include definitions for those, of course, and then we also wanted to break out the student population served a little bit and ask how many campuses total you serve at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We wanted to ask the names of the school districts so that we can coordinate, as of course safe schools are priority of the governors, and we'd love to have a list of all the school districts that are involved with Crime Stoppers programs so we can see which ones aren't and maybe reach out to them. And then for statistical purposes, we wanted to know how many students, and we wanted to break that down into elementary, middle, and high school levels. So just the total number of students in all of your programs. So an organization could just call a school district, get their aggregate figures once a year and plug those in. And that'll give us a sense of, how intense is the Crime Stoppers presence across the state at the different levels of education, and give you all some information that you need to fulfill your statutory duties to promote Crime Stoppers programs at schools, so we can see, how much coverage is there at the middle school level, how much coverage is there at the high school level. So those are the changes that we're contemplating for the campus Crime Stopper program reporting.
Okay. Connor, quick question on the fourth checkbox you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a checkbox for a standalone program, they would be completing this entire document on their own. Do we really need that fourth checkbox to indicate that they are a standalone program?
Our thinking there was that if they are filling this whole format on their own, they're a Campus Crime Stoppers program, but they don't have a checkbox that applies to them. So we thought that might just be confusing. So just so that everybody filling this out has something to check if they're operating on campuses.
Okay, makes sense.
And then, of course, we also want to make sure that our instructions here mention charter schools as well and charter school systems.
On that one, Connor, if we mention charter schools, does it, I guess, in terminology, does it matter? Charter school, private school, is there any difference in them?
The statute for Crime Stoppers organization authorizes tips to be released to law enforcement agencies, school districts, or open enrollment charter schools. Under Texas law, open enrollment charter schools and independent school districts are generally treated about the same. And it's your non-open enrollment charter schools, which are more of a private school, that are excluded from a lot of the provisions in the education code. It's kind of because open enrollment charter schools get state funding, and so it's kind of like the regulations come with the money. So you can operate on private school campuses, no problem. The law does not authorize a Crime Stoppers organization to release tips to a private school if they don't have their own law enforcement agency. There are a couple of law enforcement agencies I know that deal with private universities, but I don't think with I'm not sure about lower level private schools. So that does seem like, I don't know, is that something that the council would like to know? Is are folks operating on private school campuses?
Yeah, I guess I'm just imposing the question that is that something we need to track? I mean, anybody else feelings on it?
I think we should, I think that would be something good to track. That way we have an idea of where, what type of schools are being supported or that Crime Stoppers programs are involved in, the different levels and types of schools. Gives us a good picture of the state.
And should we track, I guess another box on there, should there be anything on there for universities, regardless of the type, but just, you know, we're serving some type of a university, because I know some are
Yeah.
covered and not.
Yes.
I guess this is just more for, statistical data. Is that correct?
Yes, and in the past, we have had a
Yes.
number of programs that focus very specifically on upper or higher education campuses.
I think it would just help us in the future, you know, look where we need to market or go, and do we need to approach what type of school district, or, and like I said, the charter schools have been left out there. We focus on the ISDs, but we haven't really been focusing on charter schools.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we can add those in, and y'all get a chance to see all this again before we ask you to approve it. So I think we can probably throw that on there and come up with some definitions and see what you think.
Thank you.
And then the final change that we're looking at making is under the attachment checklist, the updated board of directors list. Because this is just an attachment to the PFRR, you know, the typical way that we get this is a scanned PDF of the board members, and that is, as you can imagine, not very useful for trying to generate directories or contact sheets or anything like that. So we wanted to move that over to the annual report as well, and instead of asking for it as an attachment, to ask for it in format, which we just actually started doing in January. So are there any other pieces of feedback that the council members have for the PFRR, and what they might like to see in the proposal that we bring back in the fall?
Harry, you have any?
I guess my only question is under the corporate risk assessment. If the program answers no to any of those questions, what happens?
I think when we talked about this a few years ago, adding these questions, if y'all remember, was more of like a self-assessment of, as they're filling out, like, this is a risk to us. And this is something that maybe we should be implementing or putting in our bylaws. That's what I recall us talking about, but I don't know, maybe the staff has more teeth in it.
This is Connor Kenny, Texas Crime Stoppers. Currently, it is mostly used as a self-assessment. However, our longer-term organizational plans is to step up the amount of technical support that we offer organizations. So especially if we're getting this on a online form, we can have it go ahead and spit out a list to us of people who answered no if there is something that we thought it should be yes. And so if they say, hey, we don't have a conflict of interest policy, we could contact them and say, hey, you know, we have a model conflict of interest policy right here. It's something that we recommend. Would you like us to send you a copy so that you can see if you want to adopt it for your organization? That sort of thing.
And Connor, some of these templates are going to be like in the kit, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that good, Perry?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And if Connor, if anybody else has any particular comments, I mean, we can just email you with them and write it on the document itself.
Yes, y'all are free to contact us as much as you wish. We just can't have three of you discussing this because it'll be posted for future action. So that would be, in effect, a meeting that's held outside of open meetings. So But they're, as long as you don't ask us what more than 2 other commission or council members are saying, we are free to engage in dialogue about that. So if you have ideas, let us know. And then as we prepare drafts, we'll probably be shooting them by you to get your individual input on them.
All right, well, we appreciate your hard work and the rest of the staff on that.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we will be sending a survey out to all the organizations to get their input and feedback. So hopefully you won't be, you usually do hear from people, but we do want to make sure that we talk to other organizations and make sure that they're aware that they can provide us input as well, because they're the ones filling it out. So I want to hear what they have to say.
That's great.
Okay. So moving on to the annual information update form. This is a form that we currently use. We used it last time in January, and it was really helpful in actually getting board lists that are useful, that we can plug in emails and phone numbers and not search through literally hundreds of PDF files for information. So we talked about a bunch of information that we would move over here. For the rest of the form, our experience this January was that it was good to require answers for the names and contact information for the officers, because several organizations came up and said, hey, you know, we don't have a treasurer, so I don't know how to submit this. And so the conversation we would have is, okay, well, you really need to have a treasurer, you know, et cetera. And then moving on to the additional board members, we left slots for up to 15. And there were a good chunk of organizations that did not fill in names there. So we didn't want to make it required, just in case organizations have a smaller board and they would then run into problems. But I think we could beef up the instructions that indicate that people need to post their entire board list. This was also an exercise in I think, education, technical assistance with organizations in terms of it's really, I think, time for everyone on a Crime Stoppers board to have a working email address. That was something that not everybody had for everybody. So that was a conversation we were able to have, and I think it was helpful maybe to some organizations. So beyond the stuff that we want to move over from the PFRR that we talked about, really the only thing was that it was an education for me, at least, that several organizations, their coordinator was not actually a law enforcement employee. So we're thinking to revise the way that we ask for the coordinator information to really ask them, you know, are you employed by a law enforcement agency? We could ask them, you know, are you currently certified, so that we know who all the TCOL folks are, and then just ask for their agency name, and we don't necessarily need the mailing address, you know, for the agency. We just need to know which agency it is and are you a direct employee or not. So beyond that slight tweak and the stuff that we have already talked about moving over from the PFRR, those were the only changes that we had in mind for the annual update.
Connor, would it be helpful to add like a little like header note above the blank board members that aren't officers, like something along the lines of please share your other board members' contact information so that they can receive our newsletter and information about upcoming trainings, or something along those lines, just so that they realize, hey, I'll take the extra time to fill these people's names in. I don't know if that would be helpful, but
yeah, that is definitely along the lines of what we were thinking. I need to check the technical capabilities, but another thing that we could do is have just a checkbox there that says, I don't have an additional board member. So that would not, then if they check that box, it wouldn't require them to enter in a name or anything. And therefore but they are still kind of getting prompted to go ahead and say, yes, I don't have a board member, instead of just not filling it out. Because judging by the responses that we've gotten, we do have a number of organizations who are not filling in all of their board members when they submitted this form.
Connor, Do you think that your IT maybe has the capability of a box that says how many board members do you have? You put 10 in and then it auto-populates 10 blanks for them to fill out that'll be mandatory?
I'll have to check on that, but I will check on that.
The reason I ask is if we have the checkbox like you talk about, we're only going to get 15 board members. If we have a program that has more than 15 board members, then they're going to pick and choose, and we're going to miss out on some. Whereas if we have a checkbox that says we have 18 board members, then it fills out, or it gives us 18 fields for them to complete.
Yeah, and one thing that we can do when we send out the survey on this is ask people how many board members they have so that we know to put in an adequate number of slots. We just kind of went with 15 because we thought it was safe, but there may be some out there with more than that.
So Steve, you're saying like it wouldn't even show all those 15 slots of board members. It would be blank and it would have a question of how many board members do you have? And it'd be a drop down. So it'd be like 0 more or up to like 50 more. And then based off of the number you pick, it would auto populate down below the form with like 50 extra board members. Is that what you're saying?
That's kind of what I envisioned. I don't know if that's something IT can actually make happen.
We can look into it. This is created on FormSite, so it's actually something that our team does.
Okay.
But we can actually look into it and like Connor mentioned that we can survey and find out, you know, who has the maximum number of board members and make sure that there's an adequate space there. But we'll look into it further and see what our capabilities are.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we do not require action on those two forms. So with that, if there is no other further feedback, we're good.
All right, anybody else? Saying that, I guess we'll move into public comment. Let's see, anybody else has anything they need to address? Okay, at this time, we'll open up the public comment, and I know this is a little different, but again, as a courtesy to others, communication is limited to 2 minutes per person. Persons wishing to address the council on any matter not on the posted agenda are invited to do so. However, the council is not able to undertake extended discussions or to act on any of the non-agenda items. I will turn it over to Lindsay to call out the names because if anybody was wanting to comment, she had.
There's nobody listed for public comment at this time.
Okay, do you have Buddy Huberger on? Do you have him on your line?
He is listed currently as an attendee. He did not type in question, but I don't know. I guess maybe he messaged you.
He did. If you can unmute his mic, I guess, and see if he has a comment.
Okay.
Unmuted.
He is unmuted.
Yes.
All right. Buddy, thank you. Do we have anybody else in there, Lindsay, do you see?
Muted.
Nope, nobody else is listed.
Okay. I think since we talked about some of the items on the agenda and the documentations that we have, I know that the MOU question has been on the PFR for years. And that was something they tried to comment. But I think what they were trying to do was in the training is come back and make sure people have MOUs, or in the training that we discuss MOUs to try to get programs up to date, try to protect those programs. But it's not to put a burden on anybody. So anybody's comment?
I really appreciate Betty saying something about, well, a lot of the things. You mentioned about best practices being a suggestion, and I think that's exactly what it is I think the state has some resources they want to share with smaller and larger organizations based off of the data that we've received of what's been helpful. And just being able to disseminate that either on the website or via email is just some best practices so that each organization can be better equipped and we can learn from each other so that we can combat crime across the state. That's my understanding, and maybe other council members want to add into that. But yeah, we definitely do not want to put an unnecessary burden on you. We want to be a resource and helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think any of us are trying to burden the programs. We're trying to lessen the burden in some of this, and hopefully we'll get there. With that, Mr. Huberger, on that also with the association, and y'all get it out, we're going to be surveying the programs on the PFRR to get their input on that, things that they'd like to see on there, things that are confusing. We will be surveying all the programs to try to get input from all of them as well before this is finalized. Anybody else? I've got like 2 things working. I'm reading. Most people were texting me during this. I guess they didn't get online or something.
Cindy Genis just raised her hand, so I don't know if she has a question, but I'll unmute her.
All right.
Cindy?
Good afternoon, folks. I'm with Crime Stoppers of Southeast Texas. I'm a volunteer with their organization. And I just want to thank y'all for what you're doing. I take the other gentleman's comments to heart, but I also appreciate the fact that the accountability that organizations have to have when you're dealing with, public monies. So, I totally get that. And just want to commend y'all for this format. I mean, this is a really great way for people to understand more about all the inner workings of Crime Stoppers. It's informative and educational just to watch your meeting happen. And, when the meetings always take place at a physical location without this format to see people virtually, a lot of people aren't going to be able to make those meetings. So I commend you for pursuing this type of format that allows for much greater participation across the state, and want to encourage the staff and the council to keep up your good work. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, and I think to put into that, and again to the staff and all the council members. Unfortunately, I know the staff has been hard at work. I know they've been out of the office, and it's kind of put a quirk in things to get things accomplished. All of us have been going through that, and law enforcement, all of you. So unfortunately with COVID, I think it's thrown a little things off, and I'll accept the responsibility, and I apologize on behalf of the staff and all of us for not, properly getting the information out there. We will do a better job, and then somewhere down the line, I think when we do get back in person, hold these meetings, maybe we'll see a reason to continue with the virtual segment of this so that we can include more people across the state as opposed to just right there in person, if that's something that we're allowed to do by legislation. So we'll look at that. Anybody else have any comments?
There are no questions and no hands raised.
No hands raised? Hang on, I got a text. Let me see. All right.
Lindsay, how many people are on that aren't staff and council right now that you can see?
There are 8.
8. And
Mhm.
is it possible, since it's so few, just to open their lines if they have no way to text us or they can't figure out the comment, just to see if there's any other public comments?
Sure. Okay, Andrew's unmuted, Cindy's unmuted, Joey is unmuted, Kenny is unmuted, Stephanie is unmuted, the other Stephanie is unmuted, Teresa is unmuted, and Buddy is unmuted.
They sure are, and they really helped so much on Jessica and my campaign for re-election, and we both got elected again, and yeah, so right now.
Well, if there's any other comments, we'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I guess we can unmute you. So speak now or further hold your peace.
They are including a link to the virtual accessibility class, which is actually right now, and usually we have a
few people, Lindsay. Thank you for that exercise.
Okay,
Well,
everybody muted.
Everybody's muted again?
Muted. Everybody's muted.
I didn't hear anybody chime in, so we'll see. I'll throw this out here, I guess, in a text message through a suggestion that we had a question on the survey, I guess on the PFRR, if training needs to be open to other qualified entities and or individuals. So I think we've gone down that trail and we can see, but again, I know that with the staff's comment earlier, due to COVID, we had to cancel multiple trainings this year. I want to make sure that gets out there. We did have multiple trainings put up through June. Some other dates, those are all done. We're trying to get those back online now with the upcoming training in Fredericksburg. I know we were discussing the holding one in North Texas, trying to get a date later on this year, especially since the conference will not be happening. And then we'll get some other trainings out there to try to get as many as possible as we can. And then hopefully by 2021, we will be back to some type of a new norm, hopefully normal. But we'll see what 2021 brings us, and we will continue forth and see what we can do with more trainings that, with online or anything else, so we can make sure we get the proper training out there and bring the instructors in to do that. So with that, does anybody else have any other comments? Staff, any comments?
I'll make a comment. This is Jewel Tapp, Program Coordinator with Texas Crime Stoppers, and I just wanted to say it has been a pleasure working with all of you guys, and I've really appreciated just learning from each of you and your experiences. I am doing an interagency change, so I'll be working with DPS, so you guys feel free to contact me. I might try and stay as involved as I can from DPS, but thank you guys.
Congratulations. Go ahead. Yeah, congratulations, and we appreciate the short time you had with us. We're sorry to see you go, but we understand.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Anybody else? Perry, are you good, Perry? Let me turn you back on here, man. All right.
I'm good. I move we adjourn.
Well, we got one more item.
Next meeting.
Schedule next meeting.
Okay, all right.
So I think we were looking around October since the conference wasn't happening. So do we have any dates in mind, or do we need to send that out to everybody and check some good dates?
I recommend we stay away from the first week, as that's usually the National Night Out week.
Thank you, because I don't know how I forgot that one.
Yeah.
So that's the first October for those of you who don't know. So we'll stay away from that.
Why don't we just make it TBD and wait for choices to be determined and have staff send us options of course, with the,
Yeah, we can follow up with you.
Send an email out and check a good date for everybody.
mhm.
Is that good with the council?
Appreciate this verification. Someone.
Okay, Margie, y'all good with that?
Yes.
All right, with that,
Can we get clarification on how, to Betty's point, we can get the word out once we decide on the next meeting date, how we are going to publicize outside of the register
It'll probably go in a newsletter.
and the newsletter? Okay.
were we able to build a email list and email everybody on short notice?
Yes, we have an email list that we can contact everyone.
It's the same people that subscribe to the newsletter. That's an automatic email list, isn't it?
Yeah, the easiest course and not to get blocked by firewalls is through GovDelivery, which is our newsletter.
Okay. Well, I guess if we send a newsletter and then in all possible ways, send it through, especially on a media
Social
thing.
media?
I'll put a newsletter out in short notice also, right?
What about the state social media?
Yes, we can do that as well.
All right. Well, we appreciate y'all's hard work, and if nobody else has another comment, I'm going to go with Vice Chair Gilmore's suggestion there that we adjourn. Did I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lauren and Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Motion to adjourn has been accepted. We are adjourned.
Bye, guys.
All right,
Bye, thank you so much.
Thank you, Margie.
Okay.
Lindsay, are you still on?
Oh, yes, I'm here. I'm fixing to close out.
Okay, I was going to say, so does this recording, is that something that you can send to me after this, or will it be too big of a file?
Hold on one second.